Hi, everybody. Welcome to Wednesday. Right, I'm pre-recording from yesterday because I got to do boss fights stuff, and so I have to work ahead. If you want to hear more about what's going on with boss fight, production is going on in earnest right now. Lots is going on. If you want the inside scoop, see what's coming up, see how it's progressing, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. Otherwise, I would talk about it all the time here, and that's not what you're here for. That first minute is important. So, myths in video games and why these particular myths are a problem. I touched on this yesterday. I want to follow it up today, like I said I would. This is partially inspired by an episode of the show Tommy, you know, the E. Falco show where she plays like the first female fictional police chief in Los Angeles. I was watching that and they did a gamer episode and it was as terrible as you'd expect it to be. Like, it was so bad that it actually made me question the depictions that the show had showed previously. Like, they did a Nipsey Hussle episode that I thought was all right, a little vanilla, but all right. And you know, they were very sort of compassionate to current and former gang members. And then they do an episode on gamers, and we're the worst people in the world. And it was another typical thing of a woman got harassed out of gaming, and she was an up-and-coming Twitch streamer, and she got swatted, and her dad got killed in the SWAT, and so she was horribly torn up, and then, you know, the family didn't want her talking to the police, and eventually she helped, but she deleted her Twitch-style account because she just couldn't take it anymore. And I'm like, oh, for God's sakes. Like, no matter how much outreach gaming does to female players, that is a very difficult narrative to overcome. And the problem with it is it's not that, you know, women don't get harassed in the gaming space. Men get harassed in the gaming space, and everyone beyond and in between can potentially be harassed in the gaming space. It's just not a uniquely gaming problem. It is a human problem. Somebody takes a video of someone and it goes viral, they can get harassed. I mean, people get harassed over politics all the time. And I mean, the whole thing about swatting being a gamer thing, and people who actually play games, I was really surprised when I put up a thing about swatting. Yes, it happens to gamers. It is not a gaming thing. And people were like, really? And I'm old enough to remember when people just called in bomb threats before online gaming was a thing. It's basically the same impulse, right? Like crank calling 911 happened before online gaming. I remember being a kid and we went to like assemblies in the gym, and a very nice police officer or firefighter, you know, would do a little presentation on why we shouldn't call 911 as a prank because it wastes resources and firefighters can get hurt. And I remember they showed us one where a firefighter was racing to a fake 911 call because somebody pulled a fire alarm, and the fire truck tipped over and 2 firemen died. And, you know, it was kind of guilting us into being good little kids, and the kids who are good don't have to be told that, and the kids who are little creeps, they don't care. The problem with this narrative with gamers is it actually, first of all, misidentifies the source. Second of all, cheapens failures of policing. And the one that immediately came to mind while I was watching this inducing Tommy episode was the killing of a Tatiana Jefferson, who was shot by a police officer who was called to her house by a concerned neighbor because a door was open. She was trying to get a cross breeze. The cop was called to the house on a non-emergency courtesy wellness check. Because the door was open and neighbor called it in. And the cop didn't follow proper procedure. Tatiana Jefferson heard somebody prowling around outside, so she did what a lot of Americans do. She gets a gun to defend her home and her nephew she was playing Call of Duty with, and the cop sees a black woman in a house with a gun and shot her through, I believe it was the window. No swatting. Cop didn't follow procedure. Civilian dead. The point is, these things happen. People get shot by police via false pretenses. Because of failures in policing, it doesn't matter the reason they're sent to a house. This stuff isn't supposed to happen, but it does. Now, in most swatting cases, I want to be very clear. Nobody gets shot. It's a waste of police resources. It's super scary. And it's a waste of everyone's time. But in the vast majority of cases, people don't get killed. Those are the extreme cases. It's usually more embarrassing for someone than anybody if the cops are ridiculously overwrought enough to break down someone's door while they're playing video games. This is tied into, the whole doxxing thing, which is a real problem. And again, not just a gaming thing, happens in politics all the time. Doxing is annoying. It's very frustrating. It's happened to me. The problem with doxing is a lot of the times it's obtained through either large-scale data breaches or, people end up in some kind of public database like a white pages or something like that. And I joke that when I was a kid, almost everyone was doxxed by this thing called the phone book, where you could look up people by name and find their address and phone number in the phone book. There was a time you actually had to pay to be removed from the phone book. The fact that identifying stuff like that has now become a source of terror because people abuse it says a lot about our society now and the things people do when they feel left behind by society. And, this combined with this idea that gaming is this, multi-billion-dollar industry bigger than the film industry. And in gross terms, it is. Like, that's something a lot of people use to really champion and fly the flag. The issue for gaming is that the profit margins on individual products, just because games take so long to make. And, when you figure what's a movie cost now, like it's usually $12 here and it's 3 hours long. A game is $80 up here and it's 60 hours long. Like, in terms of how much you're paying per hour, games are much better value for the money, but they also take a lot more to make. And, the percentage of each sale, certain things go into it. The publishing, the this, the that. If you buy a box copy, the manufacturing of the game and the disc and the box and the label and all that stuff. Whereas movies, people sit in a seat. There's a poster, there's trailers, gaming does all that stuff, and then they have to do more as well. Games operate on much smaller margins than movies do. And there's a price tolerance for games that you can only raise it every so often. I mean, I remember when you could see a movie on a Tuesday for $2, right? I remember when games were $50. The price of movies has inflated much more than the price of games. There are real economic realities in games that mean that the number of people we bring into gaming must continue to increase. We have to find new sources of players because people eventually go, this is too expensive, or I have kids now, or I have a life, I'm working 80 hours a week, I don't have time to game. you constantly have to find new players to replace the old ones. And if there's these media narratives, self-serving media narratives, because let's face it, Hollywood would prefer people be watching television or watching movies instead of playing video games, although some people do both at the same time. But there's benefit to linear media, legacy media demonizing video games because they think there's only so many eyeballs and so much money to go around. So games have this double problem. We need more new players, but the narratives are scaring these new players away because the most the least sort of exploited pot of players is still women. Men of multiple races still play games at a higher rate than women do. And, in order for games to continue to to prosper and thrive, we got to start bringing those numbers of women up. And we have to find a way to make games that appeal to women as well as men, perhaps not in the same numbers, but at least have a healthy enough secondary female demographic that player base continues to expand, because white men, totally saturated. But even, black men, Latino men could come up some, but, I think it's something like 80 some odd % of black males play video games. Like, that's pretty much saturation. You're not going to get too many more customers there. So women are the natural pot to draw from. And the only way to overcome these, television and film narratives is for gaming to really sort of have a united message that, no, this isn't true, and start holding up on our shoulders women who play games, because we know women are attracted to places, attracted to fields, attracted to pursuits that already have women, which is a chicken and the egg conundrum, I recognize, but this is what the data shows. So the only way to get more women into games is to showcase the women that are already playing and making and covering video games. Unfortunately, the only time the gaming press tends to do that is when we're harassed, and that's counterproductive in terms of this. Why would anybody want to be part of a hobby that's miserable? It doesn't make any sense. It's every time they do that, it's shooting themselves in the foot. Not because I'm saying they should suppress stories. I'm not saying that. It's because they're not doing equally true stories and finding a way to make those interesting, that are positive, to counteract the negative stuff. They also make too much out of when a female developer or a female player is harassed, it's woman is harassed. When a male developer or player is harassed, it's Fortnite player harassed or Call of Duty player harassed. The gender is not identified. It's treated as a different thing. And so there's this idea that women get harassed and men don't, when in fact men do get harassed. It's just when they're harassed, they're not identified as men. They're identified as Call of Duty player or Fortnite player, right? Or Fortnite dev or Call of Duty dev or whatever. There's something other than their gender that they're identified by. Because there's always more to the story. It's often a very personal origin for this beef that spills over into gaming, but I'm not going to get into that there. It's a problem, and it's not a problem that gaming necessarily created, because gaming moral panics have gone back to tabletop D&D. But it is a problem that gaming has failed to effectively handle and message. What gaming has done has been the equivalent of like a car magazine writing about how, horrible McLaren cars, McLaren performance cars are for the environment because they burn so much gas. I mean, I was looking up the new Toyota Supra performance vehicle because I saw it on an episode of Magnum PI. And it gets 9 miles to the gallon, like 9.9 miles to the gallon or something like that. I'm like, but you know, when it was basically a paid commercial in Magnum PI, it wasn't, this has shitty fuel economy. It's, oh my God, look at the pickup on the highway and look at how this thing turns. And he was doing donuts backwards in the driveway. And this little Toyota, for people who don't know, one of the sort of things about Magnum PI is he's always driven a Ferrari, a red Ferrari, going back to the 80s. So the fact that Toyota paid to have their Supra, their relaunched Supra, in the show, you can see what they were doing there, you know. But did they talk about it's 9 highway, 7 city? No. I looked it up. I'm like, oh dear. I didn't know 6-cylinder engines were still that bad. Like, yeah, that's not an environmentally friendly car. They don't talk about that because they're not stupid. And when the games media is taking an inordinate amount of focus on harassment and making it a gendered thing instead of it being like, come on, journalists, male and female, get harassed all the time. Anyone with a public profile who is on the internet has a story of harassment. You know, I know multiple YouTubers, male, who are dealing with ongoing, really nasty, deeply personal harassment. Do you see these people profiled in articles? No, because it's treated as a very different thing. 2 problems with that. You're not treating women as fully formed human beings when you have a double standard like that. If you expect men to take it, you'll have to expect women to take it. And if women aren't supposed to take it, then maybe men shouldn't be taking it either. Have I made my point? But also, when you focus on gaming being a uniquely awful place for women, and then you go, well, women just don't play games. I'm sorry. You're either temporarily stupid because a lot of these people are not dumb people, or there's some sort of willful ignorance or some sort of agenda going on here. And unfortunately, I think that a lot of the defenders of women in gaming do struggle with their own very deep-rooted sexism, that they do think women are just inherently different on fundamental levels from men, even though study after study after study after study has shown that individual variations, so variations between individual men, individual women, and everybody beyond and in between, far outweigh the sort of discernible, measurable differences in, you know, the male brain versus the female brain. Individuality is real, and people being individuals is real. And there's also a perception thing where if women come into a hobby expecting to be harassed, it seems way worse than when it happens. Instead of it being like, you know, guys, it's, he's just an asshole. And I think guys should be given more license to talk about harassment bothering them. One of the things I'm happy about is that guys who know me are honest with me, that it bothers them. Now, part of that is I give them incredible license to speak without judgment. But I think a lot of the times these guys who are fixated, they have a fetish about women being harassed in gaming, is because they would like to talk about how harassment makes them feel bad, and they don't have license to do that. The truth is, however, that the more we call attention to the harassment of women, the more people are going to do it because it gets a pop. It's an easy way to make everybody go crazy. So what do we do about it? Well, the truth is more positive stories matter a lot. And I'll share one right now. I'm doing boss fight t-shirt designs. If you're a boss fight backer and you did the t-shirt design, check your email. Check the crowdfund page. If you took the t-shirt, tiers, that includes the all the things tier and everything like the pony dances and everything like that. You get shirts. Go vote. Because so far, I offered them a shirt with a female silhouette and a male silhouette. And the majority of these backers are men. But the female shirt design is winning by a landslide right now. Like it's not even close. And so this idea that, yeah, and granted my sample size is not typical, but it's a large enough group that like guys don't have these issues, not across the board. It's not normal to see women as some alien race. You know, we're not a different species. And if you think we are, like, that's your problem, not ours. The rest of us just want to play games. You know, one of the things that makes me more happy than anything is when I'm playing Doom, I'm just another Doom player, and I really like it when a longtime commenter will get comfortable enough to kind of give me a little bit of shit in a playful way. And then they go, oh, I'm sorry, did that go too far? Because they were kind of like rude or insulting, and because they're trying to be polite, right? And I'm like, no, man, you've been around long enough. You've earned the license, right? And that's respect. And that's what happens. And the truth is that the grief that women get is when we first start. And then periodically after that, when people just decide to twist what you say. That's the grief everybody gets. What's different is what we're taught it means. And one of the things I realized combing through vapid celebrity news this week for a sense of perspective is Lizzo takes shit, Justin Bieber takes shit, you know, various celebrities take shit, politicians take shit all the time. They don't feel the need to constantly address it. Most of the time, they ignore it. If it gets really ridiculous, they might do some damage control. But most of the time, it's just haters gonna hate, or as Ellen says, haters are my motivators. Opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one, and they just keep going. And that's pretty much what we need to do. Because, you know, if major celebrities like Lizzo and Taylor Swift and Lady Gaga and, you know, lots of other people whose music we all love take hate on Instagram on the regular, you know, it wasn't easy to be Daisy Ridley the last 5 or so years. Why are we making an especially big deal when women with a profile get it in the gaming space? Women get this everywhere. Men, certain types of men, get it everywhere. These are societal problems that we will not address if gamers are an easy false target. You know, if it's an easy red herring. And we're not actually going to solve these problems when we keep pointing people in the wrong direction. So hopefully you enjoyed this content. I haven't done something on this in a while. And that episode of Tommy really pissed me off. Like, I almost wanted to, like, not watch the show anymore. I'm just so... It wasn't quite Law & Order Special Victims Unit worthy. It came in at about 50% of that, but it was still angering, man. Anyway, if you want more boss fight updates, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching.